Hey everybody, welcome back to the finest show in Starfleet, I have to say. This is X's for Show, your premier reaction show. You can check us out on the web at X's for Show. As for me, I'm Nico Action. You can check me out on the social at Nico Action. That's Nicoation.
Come to think of it, Star Trek really has not dealt with the future of streaming and streamers and how horrible media has to have recovered from, gotten worse again, had a renaissance around Kirk's time, really fell off. When Picard retired, he really went about trying to make streaming better. His cooking show was just absolutely the tits, but it kind of tanked because everybody found out that his wine is terrible.
Your taste in wine is pedestrian at best.
I'm TK, and you can find me at TK Elemental, looking forward into the future of this wretched industry we love so much.
And I'm your producer, Kevo really, and whether I like it or not, I'm sure I'm going to be stuck doing some amount of graphics for whatever nightmare the future of streaming is. And
good luck on those shitty pads with their, sometimes they've got 4 colors.
What's the deal?
I could do an entire episode about my favorite sci-fi and or magic programs where they have to do this, and how some people I think one of the things that Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man got better than most people in Star Trek shows is the so fucking done with this kind of attitude where everybody in the future of Star Trek for many years was all very this is wonderful.
It's perfect. It's fine. I'm not having any trouble at all.
And then Michael Burnham gets, let's just be honest, chronal shunted to the future. And she's just every stupid thing. And she is so perfect when it comes to interacting with that sort of hollow stuff. I think she gives it, and the way Tilly gives it, they physically interact with the props really well. And then, there's Stamets, who I thought he treated everyone like a prop, but not the actor, the character of Stamets, who really is always just trying to figure out how he can do what's best for science, but has a problem with the way that everyone else is always in his way. But now we have a character that puts early Stamets to shame. And he has just gotten better all season long. We are here to talk about Disco from all of our backgrounds. And then we are so excited to talk about the second season of Beacon 23. We just had such a great intro. I got so excited. I forgot we didn't already say what it was.
I'm worried about who you're about to say.
Yeah, who are you about to say is so great? It's Raynor, right? Are you about to say Daddy Raynor?
Well, that Raynor is that he specifically treated people like props initially coming on.
Okay, yes.
And that his transformation has been great. His redemption has been great.
Disagree.
So one of the things that I do like about it is he's still himself. And that's very Voy Deep Space Nine era. Yeah. Where the characters kind of keep cycling, but I would really love to get your take on it as well.
I don't like the trope, but so here's the thing. I don't like the trope, but they are doing it as well as you can, if assuming you don't like the trope. I wish they had not pitched him this way at all. For one, I don't even like that he's a Kelleran. It's too obscure. I want to know what's going on. Where are the Klingons? Give me a race that we've been working with a lot. The fact that
Romulans are part of Starfleet now.
We know a little bit about the Romulans because of her mom. But
the Romulans.
They're always giving us the Kardashian Bajoran twofer. It's always a half Kardashian, half Bajoran who's going to tell you what's going on with both nations just by showing up. I don't know. I feel like there were other options. But the bigger thing is really, as soon as he did the whole you can tell me in 2 minutes or less thing, I kind of was just I don't even like the idea that Burnham left him alone long enough to be that big a dick. I would have preferred if the minute he did that, Tilly just told on him and was like, you have to come back. Michael, you have to come back and yell at him because he's a dick. And I think that would have been the better solution than to do multiple episodes of him continuing to behave in a way that just this crew doesn't do anymore, because this is a woke crew in 2024 of 3,000 years from now. And we're just not, we're not going to do that. So rather than doing the arc of like, he gets a little bit better, and then finally in this episode, and they could have played this for more humor, he goes, okay, you obviously need more words than that. You can keep talking, which I thought was a funny joke, but I would have made it even funnier. And I just feel like the joke should be, you don't even get to be this big a dick on this crew. It's just not allowed.
I I am going to say it. I'm going to just put it out there one time. He perhaps reminds me of someone.
Yes,
and
I get that
very overwhelmingly.
Yes,
and
bad attitude, heart of gold.
That's the one.
I'm sure his space Snapchat is very similar.
Yes. Kevo, I've presented to you a theory that I would love to see, your reaction to, and then of course open the floor to TK's brilliant future of Starfleet mind. And I think part of why they keep fast forwarding Rayner through countless experiences with the whole crew is so Michael can leave at the end and he can logically inherit Disco. But he would need all of that experience with Stamets, where he got to live through so many timelines with the crew, where now he's had a do or die moment and came to understand that it's time to give in to the crew and hear them, where he showed respect to his people and he toasted them and he showed Michael deference and played into her logic. I think they're fast forwarding him so that he can be the next Disco captain. Not that necessarily they knew this was going to be the final season, but Kevo, I'd presented that to you the other day, and Teak, you're hearing it now for the first time live on air. What do you guys think about my potential revelation?
Well, if I may say something that is a little spoilery in terms of things that have been said in interviews, it has been hinted that Rayner is going to be left in such a place at the end of this season of Disco that he wasn't really going to go anywhere. The intention was that there could be more Rayner, and I feel like I didn't read too heavily because I neither wanted very many spoilers, but it was good to know and interesting to be able to watch his trajectory, thinking, that really feeds into exactly what you're saying and makes me think it is a distinct possibility that we are meant to see more of him. I don't know if Michael is meant to move on from it. I think they're doing a lot of things in the show right now that are very interesting choices that sometimes feel like budgetary choices and sometimes feel like creative choices that might even have been spurned by budget, but really, like, losing Tilly for so much of last season and now having her back full force this season, such a really interesting thing to do because people would come and go from ships on Starfleet. It's really natural. The fact that we're seeing so little of Saru, would we have seen more of him in a season 6? Would he have been a half season recurring capacity? Who knows? But I really do think you are hitting on something that we might have seen Michael take on other responsibilities. We know that President Relic last season was considering promoting her to Voyager, which is the flagship. So, yeah, I think you make a really excellent point. Teak, what are your thoughts?
Who knows? Anything could be the case. It makes a lot of sense. I don't like the idea.
I get that.
I sort of think they should all die together. They should just
it's that the Will Ferrell "We Will All Go Down Together" SNL sketch with Anne Hathaway.
That's exactly what he means.
It's I would either want them to just be like, we'll be friends forever, or I was doing Saved by the Bell, but I like yours too. Yours is Scrubs. Yes. Yeah. Either option would be good. And also, I was off key for whatever I was singing, so it was like right in between. So whatever, you nailed it. I like the idea of if they're ending, they go off into the sunset together. But I fully, if we're in the new era, if we're out of episodic television, I am ready for the show that ends with the crew and the ship being destroyed together. With they make the final sacrifice and they all die. And I know that's scary. I know that's not a particularly reasonable thing to expect. I think it would be cool. I do not expect it. But I do sort of just think this is it. We worked so hard to get here. I don't know who we've really gotten that was like, no, because everybody says I'm in it for the long haul, and then the world has to keep turning. Janeway becomes an admiral. Picard like kind of was in it for the long haul, but then got old. But then like 20 years passed, and now he's actually old. So what was it 20 years ago? I don't know. I'm ready for the crew where it's just like, and she never left.
Okay. I really get what you're saying, although I'm so sorry, and you're like the one human being on the planet who's gonna get this.
What?
But do you remember when Bob Dylan was performing at the 96 Grammys and the guy came in and did
soy bomb.
Soy bomb.
Yeah, soy bomb.
I kind of feel like Picard was on a Dylan soy bomb trajectory and then went full makes wrought iron cakes in Italy. And that's where Picard picks up. Burnham is Kevy right now. Kev, could you please go back to the image of Tilly and Raynor in the conference room?
Because I'll find one, if not the exact one you were looking for.
It had a specific glowing device in the background, and I can only describe that glowing device in one way, and it's I think it's funny anyway.
You can find it.
Oh, that was it. The last one. That thing on the right there looks like a cereal dispenser at the hotel.
We had to do all of that for that joke. Kevin, cut his mic.
It's fine.
So
I like them. I like their interaction. I really do. I just, like I said, I feel like the better gag would have been like, because the other thing is like Tilly is also like weirdly scared of him when there's of course not going to be any consequences for Tilly for pushing back on this person. And I think that's a funnier thing that Star Trek has failed to do, which is like acknowledge its own continuity absurdity. So like that Burnham is still not in a 21st century prison just for those crimes because they were like, well, we need her, sure, and now we're all the way here in the future. Totally, it's how the show has to happen. But it's like if this were real, you never get out of prison for the things she's done. So the rules are obviously a little different. And I think season 5, where we're this far into the future and there are no rules, and these people have constantly pushed back against the rule of like a besieged federation that is like, you can't leave our little hovel because we'll all die if you do. And they're like, okay, we just are going to leave the little hovel because we said we want to. So what are you going to do? And nobody can do anything about it. So why is Tilly not just like, you can't ever speak to anybody like this? And I'm not the least bit scared of you. And if you do it again, I'll do something weird and fucked up to you.
You know, because I think what you're talking about is the heart of what makes us love Star Trek, Discovery in particular, and this season. Because what you posited is like, why isn't Michael Burnham locked up? Well, because at its heart, Star Trek is also still kind of like wish fulfillment, magical girl fantasy. And magical girl had been for boys for so long, and finally, is putting women in the right roles, front and center where they belong. And one of the things that it really makes me think is if this were Battlestar Galactica, Michael Burnham could only possibly be president of Caprica for the things she's done. She's done so many horrible things.
Or she's just straight up dead.
Well, yeah, but that's
like somebody just puts her out the airlock.
Oh, man, to be in marketing. So the publicity, she's the publicist. But the thing that makes me really think about then is Tilly can't go full Starbuck because this is a world where that's a social construct of fear that keeps people in line. And that's why we identify this new character who identifies with that roguish, cowboy-esque quality as being troubling on Disco. Whereas I think while we all enjoyed a lot of Picard, one of the things that made Picard kind of a bummer was everybody was a fucking cowboy. Everybody was a cowboy. The only non-cowboy was Shaw. and so Shaw automatically sucked as the non-cowboy.
No,
And
but they did it right. I think they really got it right because Shaw.
I did too, but if you go on Reddit, it says otherwise.
Fuck those people. Shaw is that is the kind of the best version of this interaction, and what I'm asking for is the evolution of it.
I love
because
that.
they go like Riker and Picard are like, I guess we gotta do our lethal what's that movie? Lethal Weapon shenanigans in space.
Yeah.
And Shaw is just like, I hate the two of you. And just is so unimpressed with the whole thing. Is so not into the idea. And eventually he comes around because you have to, because the point of the shows is always they're not 100% wrong. Star Trek also does a very good job of having the protagonists not make it worse, even if they break protocol. You know, you get a lot of these shows where it's like, well, if they just hadn't done anything, the day would have been better for everybody. But in Star Trek, it's always like they broke protocol because they knew this was the only way to save the universe. And Shaw coming in and being like, you guys are fucking exhausting, makes a lot of sense because not everybody is involved in the process. But then the whole thing is, by the end, he's like, okay, I'm on board because obviously the wretched Borg Queen and the changelings are attacking us, so we are out of options. We're doing this. And I just sort of think Tilly being like, no, you don't get to talk to us like this. This is not how we do things. And him eventually being like, I actually get it. I am going to take 30 minutes to joke around with everybody because that's how you create a crew that can get through the mycelial network and beat the two most hapless criminals of all time that there's no excuse for us having any problem with.
Can I be real with you? Let's dive in.
Please, not a fan.
Mullen. So okay, one time, Kevo and I went to a near derelict former I can't think what they were, outlet mall. It was in Pennsylvania. Met a friend, spent the weekend just kind of like hanging out in a hotel and experiencing a different part of Pennsylvania. And
Right.
there was something where like I remembered when it was such a big deal to find good outlets that my parents would go away for the weekend. And like as an adult, I came to realize they just wanted to do stuff like without their kids. They just like really wanted to like do adult things, and they couldn't do that with us around. So they would be like, oh, we're going to the outlets. And like they just did whatever human adults do without their children. But part of it certainly was the shopping because they came home with the bags for proof. And I think what I'm trying to get at is I remember when I was like 8 years old and outlet shopping meant like my parents were going to the best stores, getting last year's things for decent prices, but it was always good stuff at good quality. One of the things that Discovery always kind of required was a sense of kind of outlet mall villainy. And by that, I mean, it was villains who took place so far in the past that they didn't affect anything going forward. And then it was villains so far in the future that they somehow had to outstrip the villainy of the past. There was always some sort of artifice to the villains of both a far prequel and a far sequel. And my frustration is this feels like that trip like 8 years ago to the outlet mall with these two villains, where it is such a hollow form of its former self. Whole wings are closed. It was so creepy because like whole wings were closed. Like stores were just like empty mannequins next to open stores, and then 6 closed stores and then 1 open store. That's what Mall and Lock feel like to me, to be really honest.
And I feel like one of the ways in which what you're saying feels so true is that everything about this woman feels 15 years ago in the weirdest fucking way.
I'll tell you, do you want to know exactly what it is?
What? Go for it.
It is that they filmed this in Toronto, and this is the first time you've had a painfully obviously Torontoan person who is not there because they are the best actor for the job. It is that they are this is Vancouverian, not Torontoan, Vancouver. They are there, they are present to be part of this TV show making machine that happens out of Vancouver. She is the entire cast of Battlestar Galactica.
She is the entire cast of Stargate Atlantis.
Back then we were charmed by because we had no other options. But once we got saturated with it, I love all of those actors and I want the best for them.
Truly, but once we knew Georgia.
Once you have seen it too many times, you then see when it happens based on solely on availability and not on this was the absolute best person they could get for the job. This was the person that had time that day. And I love that you said 15 years ago because that is exactly correct. That is like peak. We will hire any Vancouverian who is good looking and who can get to set on time.
It's just, and the thing I bring it to just so many Canadian productions pretending to be North America. A quote that we love to bring up very often that keeps coming in my head is, I want to like you, toilet seat. I do. But you just keep making it so difficult. And everything about this character and trope and it's shiny, and we're like just like, oh my god, the slang and the attitude and this guy being all like, don't touch her.
But also though, I want to and I'm not trying to that thing, but if we made this human analogous, she is sort of like going up to a person of a culture who keeps their face covered or their body covered and being like, expose yourself, it's sexy.
Well, so this is the other thing we got to get into. Decades of not knowing what the fuck is under those masks. Now centuries in universe of not knowing what is under those masks. One of the best mysteries in Starfleet history, and to take it back to Battlestar Galactica, which is just hugely relevant to all this, it is the Ron D. Moore thing. Sometimes you should not show the audience your idea, because theirs is better.
Yep.
Well, he was wrong about doing it with the Cylons, because his ideas were fantastic, and I loved seeing what he thought, but he was right, and if he had been on this set, he would have said, don't you dare fucking let them take those masks off. And then he would have... What?
No, go ahead. And then what?
And then he would have seen this, and he would have been like, I will literally take you to The Hague.
Gotta
listen,
go.
I was reading about the Breen in the first place, and how originally they were sort of a production joke. It used to be an off-screen alien that they would reference. They would be like, oh, the Breen did this, the Breen did that, and then... Right. They started to realize that there was no physiology that they could invent that would make sense for the Breen. And then eventually they wanted to introduce the Breen. Like, they really felt strongly, let's just do it. So they did it in season 4 of DS9. And that's part of why
Is it really not till DS9 that we see the Breen?
And not until season 4. Yes, it is nuts. But yeah, and so that's part of why they are just the people in the suits because how do you even come up with something like that? I love Disco. I think it is such a cute, fun show, the way that I really love Once Upon a Time. So the introduction of this concept for the Breen, I find really interesting. I'm really floored by how fascinating. That was the best part of this episode for me. That and the Mirrorverse stuff. I didn't care for anything about their backstory. Do I still have one of those screen caps up of them looking longingly at each other? Yeah, this crap, I hate it.
No, I hated everything about the Breen stuff.
I liked learning more about what they are, and I thought this idea that they are this gelatinous form, and that's part of why they are in the mask. And this being a type of alien that we could do now, because it's 2024, so we could do something where they could be a distant cousin of changelings. There's so many things we can do with this. Is Disco's introduction to this not great? Of course, because it's fucking Disco, and I know that about a show that I love.
Disco.
I look forward to Lower Decks with whatever time it has left and whatever future it might have left.
They have another season so if they've seen this reference, they still have time to produce a joke.
And they might get movies still yet, which I would love. They could get any number of stuff.
And I think those animators will get more property, even if it's not Lower Decks.
Well,
And
Exactly.
if I can tie into Kevo's point,
I'm going to
think-
tie in too, but go.
Oh, thank you. Okay, it's a double
Yeah.
tie-in. I do like that these guys are introduced with a sense of evolution. That's what I think is interesting. It could have just been like, well, here's what they look like, but they had to be like, not. They look like two things, and one of them is very hush hush, don't talk about it. And then the other one is kind of like, hey, I guess everybody gets to look at that one, I guess. And so just that there's this sort of like duality of face under the mask. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a double wig reveal for the
Yeah.
Oh, cut his mic.
this is sort of Roxy
your mic.
Andrews. This Breen was left at a bus stop, and
So first off, the double wig reveal is her with the two hair lengths.
Yeah.
Also, just like, I understand that there are times when you gotta work. You're going to work. And work for you means raccoon eyes. Tammy Faye Baker full on went to the church and then sobbed until she couldn't breathe anymore. And then you go, there it is. That's the look right there.
Yeah.
But there are other times where it's like, you've been in prison for 2 weeks. When did you get time for this? Were you just burning small things that you found and rubbing them in your eyes?
she looks like Adrian from No Doubt in the Don't Speak video,
Truly.
doing the makeup in the mirror.
Truly.
That's actually, and that really is something about this character as well that I think is part of my issue with her that I was saying to Nico. First of all, very little difference between these two things. I'm a
Yes.
little edgier now. This is a character regular on a teen drama, and this is her after she goes through a goth
These are just two
transformation.
different Sabrina Carpenter singles.
And
It's also
Yes.
like the idea that they were like, time has passed because she got a single fucking haircut.
well, and part of my issue with this character entirely is that this woman is 34 years old. I would really be so much more forgiving about everything about these characters and their story if they were teenagers. If they were more like Adira's age, I would find everything
Yes.
about them not even necessarily more compelling because whatever, it still is going to be what
It's going to be so difficult to be compelling with these two in the final season. I agree.
But more, I'd be more forgiving of it. I would be more understanding of them being these kind of like ridiculous, unstoppable emotion monsters. But
Yeah,
like,
the fact that
no,
they're
she's
so
35.
horny, the fact that they're really horny all the time, and like, because that's two great teen beats, really horny all the time, and whoops, we completely underestimated you.
Yes.
And that's the only, at this point, that is the only way to excuse how stupid they are being
Third
about.
trope, killed your uncle.
Well, thank you. And that, yes, the other thing is like, oh, and I'm your big brother now. Like,
Yeah.
Oh my God! Stop.
which
Not at you,
I
at
just no, I know. I actually, Kevo, you really turned this around for me because I kind of thought they were unredeemable. They're actually totally redeemable if they're 15. They are
If they're cloak and
amazing.
dagger, it's
Yeah.
kind of sexy.
Yeah, if they're 15, it's amazing because the whole thing is like, the crew looks at them and goes, "Oh, guys, they're just kids," and then they get shot in the face, and then they're not kids anymore. But it's
Kids.
too late. Yeah, exactly. It's too late.
Youths.
Youths. But the fact that they're two adults, and then ultimately it turns out he's way more emo than she is.
He is a Mac Miller album.
It's
he
rough.
is.
I hear what you guys are saying about the Breen thing. That's one of the biggest reveals in Star Trek. Like
Yes.
and I don't even. This is terrible. This is terrible. This face is terrible. This face is terrible.
No. He looks like Olmec wearing the haunted mask.
But
no.
He looks like the Mask from the movie The Mask, starring Jim Carrey.
He looks
but
like Rocky Dennis from Mask wearing the
The
mask.
Mask,
From the
thank
movie
you, that's perfect.
Mask.
This
He does.
I do like the gelatinous concept, but that's your entire budget. Then you spend everything on
Yeah.
that. You do not phone that in, and this is track phoned in. This is boost mobiled in.
You know what?
Thank
And
you,
Sarah
sir.
phoned in.
once again, this is disco, so this is just what it looks like on disco. So they'll make it look different on someone else.
Yeah, I hope so,
And-
but it's unfortunate because this is the first time we've ever seen this. This was like, I was really shocked when we got this reveal. But
Yeah. Same.
To take it to something good, because I do want to be positive. The way that this whole episode bought back for me, and the way this season really has bought back for me in a lot of ways, was the Chekhov's gun sort of set up where Tilly goes in to see Ricky from My So-Called Life. That's just he's Officer Ricky from My So-Called Life.
That is
You.
Yeah, Officer Ricky from My So-Called Life.
Officer Ricky Tren from My So-Called Life.
And she's like, "Oh, you seem upset. Is something going on?" And he's like, "I will talk to you about it later." And the whole time you think he's going to be like, "I have an alien gestating inside me and it's going to eat the whole ship when it's born." And instead he's just like, "Isn't life fucking weird?" That, to me, that is the joy of Star Trek Discovery. That finally we have a show that is so 2024 woke that the crew, for the first time, because they should have been doing this the entire time, actually sits down and is like, our lives are fucking insane.
Did anybody catch the Easter egg that actually happened in this scene of who the bartender and this bar patron?
Oh my gosh!
Yes, I did see both.
The Facebook page shared, we choose to believe that these are the ancestors.
Yeah.
Yep.
They did the bartender
Morgue.
The bartender they did have in the last episode or the one before that, where Tilly is drinking with the Cylon. Listen, I don't talk about anybody referenced with the show they're from. I do the shows that they came from. So y'all gotta learn this. This is my Darmok enchilada at Tanagra. I will name things based on what I know them from, not on what they're on now.
Yeah, I boo the Cardassian team no matter what it is. So
yeah. So anyway, in this scene, the Ferengi bartender is there as well, and I noticed at that time I shrieked a little bit. But like these Tilly is the heart of the show for me this season.
Amen.
In that, like, and I liked Indira and Gray breaking up. Like, the great scenes in this show and the great moments in this season have been because I have watched hundreds of hours of Star Trek. I have watched every genius from Gene Roddenberry to Ron D. Moore conceive of what's out in space and tell me how scary it is. And I've seen these great, early CGI people, these early cinematographers come up with ways to show it to me. My mind has been blown. But what none of those writers or directors ever really did in those early shows was ever have the crew sit down and be like, I'm having some PTSD because I was, I saw the face in space.
It's always glib. It's always silly and glib.
And nobody ever brings it up again. Nobody ever goes like, that haunts my dreams for the rest of my life. Just somewhere out there, there's some person that's like peering into reality for us. And I love that they really did a classic switcheroo in this episode and had Tilly come in and really had you thinking that he was going to say, like, there's a thing going on that we got to talk about. And instead he was just like, our lives are very weird.
It's pronounced Action Saru, actually.
I mean, but that's another one, that storyline, the fact that they're just like, how the fuck do we get married?
That's
brilliant storyline.
How human an experience that they're having. It's sort of like,
how person an experience. Because I love that part of Star Trek has always been like, we're all people, but then a lot of times it's like you never show that. This is a perfect example of like neither of these people is human. She doesn't do emotions. He's kind of like very emotional but emotionless in his presentation. They're both people. They're both, versions of someone you could meet in the world. How do they interact? I think this is just so brilliant to watch.
Well, and then we saw her over on our other
yes, connector.
That was so funny.
I'm not ready to move yet, but I just needed to say that.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say is there's very few actors from this show that I don't actually have connections to other programs from. I grew up a huge Hellboy fan. It was one of those things that like I knew 10 indie comics and I thought that made me cool. Like I used to think Hellboy was an indie comic, and those movies are so a huge part of why Guillermo del Toro completely influenced my storytelling.
Have we talked about The Thing on the show with Doug Jones?
Which thing?
And David Hyde Pierce?
Oh, I don't think we've ever talked directly about the fact that he had originally recorded the
yeah.
dialogue for Hellboy and then had it dubbed, and David Hyde Pierce later on would publicly apologize because he didn't know he was infringing on another actor's work.
That's just, I like to get it out there just in case anybody doesn't know, because I think it's so important.
Truly.
Doug Jones did literally everything for Abe Sapien, including he did all of the physical work. That was, he did that. But then he did all of the acting as well.
Truly.
And then David Hyde Pierce was brought in to dub over him so that they could say he was in it. And when he found out, it was actually before that. He found out when he was going in, but by then he was contractually obligated. So what he did was imitate Doug Jones in every way possible. He said that was not the way he would have played it, but he just basically spoke exactly as Doug Jones spoke so that he could give him as much as possible. And he has always acknowledged it. And he was done dirty back then. I think there's a world in which he is the proto Andy Serkis of our time.
Wow.
I really love him so much. And he's beloved. We all love him. But I think he could have had a huger career and he deserved it. And he's just a great guy. Anyway, keep going.
And I love that he's taking focus on non-prosthetic roles going forward for a little while. I even feel like there's a place for him to play another role non-prosthetic outside of Saru. Like, that's one of the joys of sci-fi franchises that I love. So many people play different characters even without prosthetic. We've watched 2 TOS episodes that had actors who would later appear on TNG. Pulaski is in a TOS episode as kind of an important character, and then later comes up as Pulaski. So, like, I think that's great.
If Gemma Chan can play an Eternal after playing just a blue Kree, anything is possible in this world we live in.
So, you know what? Let's start wrapping up Star Trek and move on over to Le Beaks. I just want to say that Michael Burnham is a personal hero of mine. Super connect with her, loving it, loving her, loving this season. I was just going to say how connected I am to a lot of the cast from things before, and so how happy I am to see them on this now. How about you guys?
Well, so hold on. I want to go through it. Rhonda. Abe Sapien.
Okay, but what you got?
Brent.
We don't know Tilly from enough yet. That's unfortunate.
Well, that was gonna be my other point, but like I just don't want to go on and on. But we could talk about Disco for the rest of the
No,
night.
I know, but I want to knock out whatever we got because I'm curious. My So-Called Life.
Yes.
God, yeah.
I feel a little deer in Starship Lights now.
Okay, all right. Well, we've got 4 solid ones.
Yes.
Yeah, for real.
I'm just very excited.
I love this season. As I said, I think the thing that is drawing me back every episode is how personal it is getting and how much this is the first time that a Star Trek show has so brilliantly... Oh, God, this was another one. We didn't even talk about this. The time traveling and going back and talking to Ariam.
That was a great moment.
Yeah, and, that she just tells her she's going... That is such a thing that, like... That's even something that would have happened in a previous Star Trek, but really wouldn't have gotten quite played for the emotions the way that it did here. And with great actors, it's kind of something that would have been like to the best of Worf's ability on Deep Space Nine or something. Just like, but that this show has so connected with the human emotions and I keep saying woke in this kind of joking, but very serious way where like, old Star Trek was just a little bit born out of a world where we don't talk about our feelings. So the fact that everybody is like, space is big, that was kind of like, whoa, they're talking about their feelings so much. And now we all have gone to therapy. And so like the fact that this show is showing so many character interactions in which
I really agree. Watching so much TOS and having it to compare to TNG, I really agree so much. The difference between TOS and TNG is remarkable for those 20 years, and now for the 25 to 30 years between TNG and Disco, things changed then as well. And I really get being attached to the format that Star Trek took in the 90s. There was almost like 500 episodes. I forget the number off the top of my head, but there was a ton of it and it was great. But,
the volume is borderline egregious.
Yeah. Television evolved, and I am really loving this season of Disco. I think a lot of the standalone episodes that we're getting are really great. This season, I don't love the season-long arc introduction to this because I don't feel like it always works, and I don't feel like it's always necessary. But it's what they do on modern television, so I understand why it's something that they are really trying to hone on Disco. It hasn't made the jump to Strange New Worlds or anything, so I think we're safe to believe that it's not going to be every show. Every show is different, and I've really enjoyed this show for what it is, and I can't believe it's halfway done, but I'm super stoked to see how... It's because the first week dropped too, and that's always difficult.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see how the next 5 weeks go. Nico, any final thoughts?
I'm maybe holding out hope for a movie. I understand that we're
Yes.
not exactly in that world, but we're in a place where if this is the end of Michael Burnham's story, I can think of a lot of people that'd be real sad about that. And
No, we're getting Starfleet Academy, especially if it's in this timeline, which it seems like it will be. We're getting plenty of cameos.
as long as it's not Picard showing up in the first episode of Deep Space Nine to be like, I was Locutus and I am why your wife is in a coffin.
We're not doing that again. We'll get really good, solid cameos. We might even get a Section 31 cameo.
I'm Taryn and I'm here to fuck your shit up.
I think that we are past those days, but I think we are in the days of having ecosystems. So I think it's just a lot of I think this, unless we get my wish, which is that they all die except Tilly, then I think we will see everybody again.
I want that so bad, it's my only wish. Star Fergie would be an absolute unbelievable creature.
I mean, this is when I'm like, okay, we've done every space idea we can do, so now we just have to talk about emotions in space. When we've talked about all the emotions in space, the
Black
next
Eyed
thing we
Peas.
have to do is just space nonsense, and Black Eyed Peas falls in that category. And speaking of space nonsense,
well, I saw Kevo had a finger, and I want to make
my
sure
very last thought
Kevo.
before I forget to get it out of my head. This moment is even one of the ones that I'm talking about, where they have this specific moment where they're like, Woshakun and Detmer are going on an away mission. They deserve it. So we're probably not going to see them for a few episodes. And they're hanging this lantern on what was probably a budget decision to have those actors appear for a few less episodes. It's adorable. But it's I hope that it translates to how they will have cameos the way we were talking about, that we might get to see people in Starfleet appear a lot more. We'll see. As for something where you never know who's going to appear when, what? I'm sorry, did I step on yours now?
No, you said something brilliant, and I just want to comment. I think I have, for my entire life, suffered from LBS, and it's a medically complicated thing to talk about, but I suffer medically from little bro syndrome, and I am the little broest little bro. I just ooze little bro energy no matter what I do. And that doesn't mean that I'm not a leader. That doesn't mean that I am not someone with vision. And that does not mean that I'm not somebody who can command. The truth is, Michael Burnham's got the most little bro energy of anyone. She's always looking for a strong figure to attach herself to shine with, to shine through. And I think, there are some ways that she's like, hey, Raynor, how do you feel like being a poor man's Terran Admiral Empress?
Well, it's also she's a genius and she's insanely capable, but she's a hot mess too. And her own mom is her big sister because she didn't have her as a mom.
Once upon a time.
And her mother never mothers her in any way, but is there to, be who loves her and is a mentor. And it's the same thing with Georgiou. Georgiou's not a mother to her, but she's a big sister. Both of them. I mean, the other one is way too captain, and then the other one is way too murderer. But it's not that she needs somebody to take care of her. It's that there's a lot of things. For every amazing thing that she knows better than anybody, there is something, and it's like a life thing. It's like How do you talk about your feelings that she has no idea? How do you follow commands for 15 minutes? How do you just follow the command to get down the elevator? She just needs somebody to show her how to do that stuff.
I don't like how you're calling me out on air with our special
listen,
relationship.
You said the thing that you said, and I didn't think about it until you said it, but it's true, because the fact of the matter is she is probably my favorite, if not my second favorite captain after Janeway. But she is an amazing captain. I do not fear for her in the captain's chair, but I still think she is a relationship disaster. And I think one of the things that's missing from the season is like she doesn't have anybody to be like, hey, this is how you deal with the fact that you are so in love with your boyfriend, but it's a mess. And she was a great captain 2 seasons ago, but she still needed Georgia to be like, listen, you might just have to kill somebody to save your crew. And it's just a great metaphor. Anyway, we could keep talking about the show for an hour, but we do need to talk about.
It's so addictive to talk about this show.
Yeah, we got to talk about the horrifying, dark, opposite to this.
Yeah, no, we have to talk about what is the first ever United Sci-Fi episodic concept. I've always wondered what would happen when a bunch of TV writers would say, I grew up on Channel Zero, and I grew up on Transmet, and I grew up on, I don't know, Fables. God, I'm naming so many problematic creators, it's making my stomach churn. But I grew up on complex narrative of interwoven storytelling. And like, I think about Preacher, and if you think about the comic book Preacher, which is a flawed masterwork. It's sort of like, what if a super sigil had a giant canker in it? You know what I mean? The things it got right were this interpolated sense of storytelling. I think what makes Beacon 23 exciting is I would name every single episode a different series. I wouldn't let them be different versions of the same series, because some of these feel more unrelated than any 2 seasons of American Horror Story ever could. There is something intoxicating about the breadth of narrative that Beacon 23 isn't just interested in telling, but it would be uncomfortable not forcing you to think about. These 3 episodes are a marked departure from a stunning season 1, but truly shape an anthologic. Is that the adjectival form of it? Anthologic? Anthologic form of narrative united storytelling. Each one of these episodes has been a film unto itself that is I just wish this crew of people could do an Alien show. It has been a marvelous season.
I like that. This would be a fantastic, because it's so tense. And the thing, this really has always felt like a play to me. And it has a lot of like no exit, because it's literally, there is no exit from this room. But there's just this idea of like, suddenly people come into the beacon. Suddenly people come onto the stage. Why are they there? What are they doing on the set? They should not be there because it's impossible to get to. And they kind of have to, the whole first season, why did the girlfriend of Lena Headey show up? Like, what is she doing there? Now she's gone. We go back in time. There's somebody else there. Why did somebody show up to talk to this previous lighthouse keeper?
Why was Jimmy James in raccoon makeup?
My God.
They are trapped in this location, and it really, a lot of it feels like a stage play to me in a way that I absolutely love.
Yes.
And I love that they immediately found a way to pick that up. And then by the second episode, they completely subverted it by actually taking us to an entirely new location.
All new characters except for one character who we'd never gotten the internals of.
Yeah, we never followed Harmony.
It.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the fact that I still don't know if that was Harmony, who is the AI that is a part of this whole thing, if that was her having a hallucination within the beacon, or if she was transferred back to whatever their central hub is at the end of last season and then reactivated her. Yeah.
I think it's recursive program cloud storage.
Yeah, like that's my guess too.
Yeah.
But I think there's a really real way in which it's possible that she's actually just kind of hallucinating the whole thing on Beacon 23.
Like she was given a virus, which is
Yeah.
the equivalent of when Sydney Bristow would be given a hallucinogen.
Yes, it is an alias hallucinogen moment. I think it is entirely possible that that's what we see in episode 2. But it just to completely switch direction and go with Harmony, the AI's experience of the world, and that's where we get the incredible cameo by the actor who plays Tarina on Star Trek Discovery, playing an entirely different character. And it's one of those
Truly.
things where they're AI, so you think they're going to be really robotic and like, oh, so they hire this lady because she's older and she can play no emotions. But instead, she's actually playing like kind of a Miranda Priestley.
I
like,
literally was going to say she plays all of the parts of Miranda Priestley that Wilhelmina Slater is not. That
Yeah.
was literally going to be the
Yeah.
example I used.
And so just a great actor, and just it's such a fantastic moment. And then we do a thing that we have done, but the move is lateral this time rather than back in time, which is we go see another Beacon Keeper. We had previously in the previous season done flashbacks to other people that had been the lighthouse keeper of Beacon 23, but we never saw any of the other beacons or anything else that is going on. And in this season, we have in the 3rd episode met Iris here. Iris, I
Iris,
Iris, thank you.
Of course.
Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to sing Goo Goo Doll's name for you. So
Who is, a current lighthouse keeper, and who kind of introduces us to the fact that like the other lighthouse keepers are having a whole other world that we are not a part of here in this ridiculous backwater. I don't know. It's just, I also, just in honor of the fact that we were doing this, finished watching Silo, which I've read the books for. And it's funny, I've read the books for that Silo is based off of, which is Wool. And I have now seen the whole series, but I have not read the short stories that comprise Beacon 23 yet.
is that the end of Silo? Is Silo it's a wrap at 2?
No, Silo has a 2nd season. So the books are 3 really distinct books.
And it's like Wool, Dust, and
Shift.
Okay.
So we got to the end. I guess we got really to the end of Wool. And then I'll be interested to see what happens next season, because Dust follows a completely different character.
And just to connect that for the audience, these are both Hugh Howey projects that
right.
were
Hugh Howey. Well, I actually Beacon 23 I think was not self-published. I think
wow,
by then I think he
and then
had,
he was Hugh Howey.
right, exactly. Or if it was self-published, it was because he was.
It was a
Kindle,
Brando Stando.
Kindle Unlimited bestseller. Yes. So he did this bunch of short stories that became Beacon 23. But he's got, I think, at least another 2 seasons of Silo to do both Dust and Shift. And I don't know, this is much less comprehensive. Beacon 23 has much less material. So I'm really interested to see what they do.
There's something almost Black Mirror to the way they're treating a lot of Beacon 23, which, beyond the fact that this is a cast of people who are exquisitely sexy.
Yeah.
There's conventional attractiveness. And when we look at Freddie Prinze Jr., we're like, that is a man who is conventionally attractive. When you look at a guy like Clive Owen, you're like, parts of his face look like the aggro crag and parts of his face look like silk. He must be sexy. And this is a cast of people who are very sexy, which adds something to your sci-fi. This sort of oh, that person is so beautiful and unique. They have this one-of-a-kind quality. And this push toward one-of-a-kind looking characters with one-of-a-kind personalities and backstories. I don't feel any 2 characters on Beacon 23 are interchangeable. if they lost the ability to use one of these actors, if Lena Headey winds up getting cast in the most unfortunate version of Aida, taking the place of Lena Headey, it would be a nightmare. But if that made her unavailable for Beacon 23, they would find a new character to do something in that role, because these visual identities for these characters, at least in my opinion, I certainly don't know these producers. I am not an Apple TV man.
Yeah.
They are such explicit elements of who the characters are, the movement, the style. I think to one of my favorite actors of all time, Stephen Root, and his performance on this is, I mean, it's like if Pagliacci walked into Cheers. It's this beautifully unique and powerful performance that comes out of nowhere. And it makes you think. This is also one of the most beautiful men to be on television by far, with some of the most human expressions. I think that is what I love about Beacon 23. Everybody's humanity. Nobody comes off wooden or overproduced. In fact, there are times that maybe as the director, I would have said, could you give me a better line read? That because it's this show and the way these actors, sometimes by themselves in a small room, are able to fill every scene so fully, I'm entranced. It really is a one-of-a-kind sci-fi project that I hope winds up inspiring some Beacon 24, 25, and 26s.
I really appreciate what you said, too, about everybody just being very sexy. One of the things I think about is how Lena Headey was 35 when she played Cersei for the first time on Game of Thrones. And the whole point was just she was this incredible beauty. And Cersei is, when it starts, like, just previous to the point where you would say for like an old fantasy style novel that she's over the hill. She's almost at no longer making babies age. So
Don Lemon would say,
right, exactly. You know, so she was not like a 20-year-old, but 35 in the world we live in, and especially the way actors look. Like 35 is young, and she's absolutely gorgeous. She is, when this show starts, 50, 51.
Wow.
Which is not young anymore, but it's not old.
Madonna would absorb her youth.
Precisely. Stephen James, who plays Halen, by contrast, is 20 years younger than she is. And there's something about the chemistry they have. There's nothing May December about it. There is nothing Dami Mommy about her, but she's a badass. She's fucking great. And she's not young. Like the whole point is she's not this young, delicate beauty. The character is a hard ass. She is 50 at this point, but there is something very sexy about the two of them and their chemistry and the way they're filmed. And then they bring on other actors, and it's to the point where like she's doing a totally different thing when she shows up, and it's not sexual, but even Barbara Hershey just looks fantastic. She is.
Well, hold on. Barbara Hershey has got some gilf energy that is kind of hard to deny.
She is, as you said, she's occupying the room because that's all it is for so much of it. It's her talking to the air because there's, you know, she's AI acting. She's acting with an AI, and there's just something really calculated about how this show has said, like I said, that's just on a stage. It's a play. It's people showing up into this one area that is tiny and unremarkable and not jet setty. And you're just stuck in these little rooms yelling at each other.
And what was crazy about the new episode is that it didn't even introduce a new location technically. We met Beacon 67. It's still just another beacon. It was refreshing.
They absolutely just filmed on the same soundstage.
It was refreshing to see a refreshed beacon after what ours has been through.
After ours became a weekend.
Yeah, but exactly. Everything is still so much all in the same location. It's one of the things that makes this show so amazing and fun and engaging. And I love Nico's word of anthology. It's one of the things I've loved the most about this show is there is always going to be the core component of how does this episode tie back to our main narrative.
Yes.
But we are able to stretch how far we are able to go from the main narrative more and more with every episode.
And I think one of the things that I am so intrigued by when it comes to this show, maybe a little bit more than the way I was taken by Silo initially, or even the way that I'm taken by something like a Stargate, is because I brought up Stargate earlier when we were talking about Vancouver productions. This show would be just as stunning on a high school stage with a bunch of wood tables and some white tablecloths. I'm a minimalist at heart. All of my stage production writing is actually geared toward minimalism. How can a table be a stage, a bed, an actual table, and also if you put it up right, it becomes a portrait. You know what I mean? That is the sort of thing that I feel like this show represents to the most nth degree. You could literally have a couple of tennis balls like strung together on a pipe. And if you told me that was the floating tech that was going around the beacon, I would accept that. There is something about the way we all think that Tom Hanks is a genius because he took a volleyball and made it exquisite. And I am no Castaway fan, please. I mean, if you want to know what I think,
I love what you're saying, because like I'm saying Beacon 23 the play, and I think everything you're saying is correct, but I do hate Castaway, and I don't think he's a genius, and I think that's a bad movie.
I agree with you. I think if you want to see some real good Tom Hanks, you should go watch the I Really Like You video, or perhaps some Bosom Buddies.
Castaway would be a really great 20-minute film.
Yes.
Or a wonderful stage play in silence.
Yeah. I feel like Anna Deavere Smith could do Castaway some real justice.
Anna Deavere Smith in the lead role by herself in a one-woman stage play of Castaway.
Yes.
I am Anna, Mama. I am ready to write that for you and make sure you get all the Tonys you deserve.
And it's not woke because it's not woke because it's a story about a woman getting lost. So
exactly, I've seen two of her one-woman shows. She's incredible. Did either of you see the 1996 film Head Above Water with Cameron Diaz and Harvey Keitel?
I can Keitel you. I did not.
Okay.
Didn't see it.
It was filmed in Maine, so that's one of the big reasons I know about it. But it is only 4 actors. As I said, Harvey Keitel and Cameron Diaz. Kebo, you will appreciate Craig Schaeffer is the 3rd one. And everybody will appreciate that the 4th one is Billy Zane.
Handsome.
And it is 1996 Billy Zane. So yes, hey, handsome.
Yeah.
The Phantom.
Yeah. And it is... Cameron Diaz has married Harvey Keitel, and they live on this island in Maine. And just Craig Schaeffer and Billy Zane show up. It's not good. Bad stuff happens. It's a black comedy, but it is this very similar thing of like I think there's like a policeman, but literally there are no other people, not even background extras in the film. There's nobody else. It is just these people showing up on the island. And intrigue and nonsense, hilarity and violence ensue. And it was one of the first things I thought when I saw this. I just think it goes back to what I was talking about with Star Trek, which just I've watched so much of just Star Trek that I'm like, you can't shock me with your premise. Like, it's really difficult, especially your space premise. You really can't shock me with your space premise because I have watched all of Star Trek. I've watched all of Star Wars. The giant monster, I've seen it. Little monster, I've seen it. Large spaceship, I've seen it. Little spaceship, I've seen it. Seen them all. Like Bjork before me, I have seen it all. And
can I be Tom York?
Yes.
Probably.
Yes. Yeah. Or the super handsome man that does it in the movie. Not. But what you can do to really blow my mind is like because this is Deep Space Nine. Like they're just stuck on the space station, but there's only 4 of them this time around, and it's 2 of them are AIs, and you can really tweak sci-fi concepts to make them so fascinating and interesting, but it's not how you think. It is not coming up with.
I think you hit a word that even hits exactly what you're talking about, where you can do things to expound like the platform we're standing on. You're not going to introduce a new episode to me, but like you said, AI, and I was like, all the stuff that they're doing is really, I feel, the most groundbreaking holographic human stuff they have done since Voyager. Everything about Harmony and Bart and all of those things, and that's not your specific like story. It's your premise. It is the ground and the world that you live in, and it's introducing new concepts of characters. And I really think this show has done a lot of that very well.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things that this show isn't afraid to do is to dip its toes into concepts and then very quickly walk away from them. I think something that it has done in each one of these episodes has talked about evolution as a form of creationism, which is what Olive Garden is always trying to do. We have the nightmare of the police state of the Green Lanterns, I mean the AIs, in the second episode. And then we have this idea that is introduced of the anonymity, the forgettability of each individual beacon keeper, which, every time I hear beacon keeper, I am reminded how clever a take that is on the idea of the beekeeper. Beekeepers who do this incredibly dangerous thing, who go in padded, hidden behind what they do, and then go into the most dangerous situations to get us something that we want, not need. There's this idea that if beacon keepers follow in that footsteps, that padding that they need to survive, and that this show explores what happens when you take off that padding, when you get inside that mask. It's a really fascinating understanding of what psychologically is the heart of modern sci-fi. Modern sci-fi is taking very realistic either people or scenarios and warping all the other variables. I think one of the things that Beacon 23 does better than almost anything I've seen in a very long time, maybe Twin Peaks-ish, is it warps the understanding of what people will do, but it doesn't warp the understanding of the people. Do I think every character would respond with murder the way these characters do? No. Do I think their personal reactions that they then follow through with to the actions they've taken are realistic versions of what that person would do? Absolutely. This is a show that examines its own consequences in a very almost un-Star Trekian way.
This moment reminded me of something that this episode brought up that I thought is really fascinating. And again, one of the things I love so much about this show, when Iris says to Halen, Elf murdered what's his name? The original one. Everyone knows it's an open secret, obviously. We actually know the truth of that moment. We literally know Bart is his murderer.
Right.
Elf was not created until literally the moment of his death. And now Bart, who is his murderer, also has taken his own life and is no longer in the equation. So, like, it's something that I so love about storytelling in general, and I really love seeing it. I love slice of life stories, and I love generational stories and different histories, and almost that Love Actually type of story where it's crazy how these different stories interact, and getting that moment pass by like it was nothing, because it was nothing to these characters. We're aware of the truth. Yep. It doesn't really change much about what the character of Elf is. Aleph, I keep saying it wrong. It doesn't change who Aleph is, what his intentions are, and what he does. He just wasn't actually the original murderer of this guy. He wasn't created until after his death.
And Kevin, I will also say, you say it wrong compared to them on the show. They all say Aleph, but it is a Jewish word. I have always said Aleph.
Yeah, that's why I even
that is how I've always heard it.
Yeah,
it sounds like olive with the way they say it.
Well, I kept being like, It also is how we have said, I don't know if we're right about this, but it is how Nico and I have pronounced the artist who drew all of Spider-Girl, Patrick Olive. And I kind of, when they started, because they start mentioning him a lot in the second season, and I was like, oh, maybe the guy's last name was Olive and I wasn't paying attention. And it's no, they are saying, you know, it's the Alpha Olive, like
It's
they're,
the AI guy,
that's the designation of the AI. And anyway, it's just it's funny, and it's another thing where I'm like, is this a Canadian thing?
Now
Cool.
I want to. I want to be a big math nerd for a second, and if I can be a big math nerd for a second and not just mumble it because I'm really proud, there is actual magic to understanding the numbers we choose and the numbers we use. 2 is a number that we identify with. We often see ourselves in terms of binaries and entering into binaries. 2 is a very human number. 3 is a number that we recognize from patterns that recursively exist in our lifetime. But 23 is a real ugly prime number. 23 is harsh. 23 is weird. It's saddled between 2 very accessible numbers. And there's something about the number 23 that doesn't actually have any significance to our culture. You know, we associate 21 with drinking and freedom. We associate 20 with entering into a new decade. We associate 19 with the end of your teens. We associate 22 with, in many cases, either graduating college or beginning a next program, that sort of thing. 23 is an abrasive number, and I think that goes into part of what unsettles us every time we discuss this show. Kevo, I saw you had a 2 up, which evidently means binary and very inviting.
I believe it is One Tree Hill Volume 2 that has the Jimmy Eat World song 23 on it. That is one thing that I always think of with the number 23. But something else I think of with the number 23 that is completely unrelated, unless I might be off by 1 digit, but my Teen Wolf Style Stilinski 23 Beacon Hills jersey, it might be 22 or 24. Still, it's close, and that's wild.
I think there's a lot of... No, yeah, there's a lot of magic to numbers. Whatever you associate, it becomes personal.
I agree, though. I think it is such a random... It's not 24. It's not 20. It is such a unique number.
It's not 25.
Yeah.
I also want to note 2 things. 1, the Jimmy Eat World reference is a double reference because the first song that they had with numbers in it was 12/23/95. 2, the 23 as 2 plus 3 equals 5, and that as sort of like a magical number thing. Also, the setup of binary versus trinary and beyond that comes from 2 and 3. There is something very sexy and fun to play around with numbers, and this show is never like, it is the beacon of 2 but also the beacon of 3, and yet it makes you feel like feeling weird about those numbers and feeling that those numbers are as sexy as any other dangling thread that the show has is so correct and so absolutely on the path. And this is one of those things where it's like some shows like Lost was really like, no, if you're speculating that the polar bear is actually intelligent, you've gone in the wrong direction. Beacon 23 will never really be telling you, yeah, if you're wondering why the plants are still growing after all this time, you're thinking the wrong thing. Every mystery is the correct mystery to be wondering about.
And that is the nature of Beacon 23. I don't think I'm going to get every answer. I kind of don't want every answer. There are very few projects where I get every answer, and after a while I go, fine. Even the ones I don't like are fine. You know, I don't love everything about the secret history of Twin Peaks, but then you get to that point where there is a Secret Diary of Laura Palmer-esque book that is the FBI files of Dale Cooper that is immediately made non-canon by Firewalk with Me a year later, that then in the final dossier for Twin Peaks book, they literally explain that the character that adjusted that language was canonically possessed when they went through that. So that's why it's unreliable narration. There are very few things that can give you that holistic sense of magic, that overwhelming sense of every answer makes sense. This is a project like The Matrix, where the incredible vision of the Wachowski sisters, where they said, we are not going to give you every answer. You should fill in some for yourself because your answers are going to be incredible. I'll take that over Wolverine being a little Canadian French boy any day. And Beacon 23 asking, and that giant beacon looking like a brain, asking me to do the thinking for them. Yes. And I mean, obviously there's a phallic connection. There is some, this thing is going to create
Who
life.
doesn't?
Yeah, I mean everything, and then the space vagina, it's fine. But like,
oh my god,
yeah, that's unfortunate.
But I also really loved that Iris kept being like the cupola.
Yes, and everybody being like, no, but our little escape pod, our individual sperms. It's amazing. Yeah. I don't know. I think Beacon 23 is one of the best things you can spend 49 minutes on a week. It really is engaging sci-fi in the spirit of Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry said, I want a future where people can envision new ideas, and Beacon 23 is a home for new ideas in a way that very few shows seek to cultivate creativity.
The one last thing I want to say, I was just checking on this before I mentioned it. Folks, unfortunately, this is a tough one because it is on MGM Plus. And that is a tough one for me to say you've got to sign up for. Now, I live in a world where I'm willing to sign up for services for 2 months to watch one show that I want to see on them and then immediately cancel that service. But I'm 30. I'm 39. Yeah, I'm like May 1st, $5.99 for Eurovision for 1 month of Peacock for Eurovision, and then I'm done with it. I'm 39, and this is like the second year I can do that. For the rest of my life before this, I could not do it because I would forget to close out. So if you are in any way like I want to see this, but I can't, that makes a lot of sense. If you can't sign up for MGM Plus just to watch this, for $5.99 for 2 months to get through the whole thing, I 100% get it. The first season is now on Amazon on Prime. You can get it Prime, or you can, if you don't do Prime, you can order it through Amazon for relatively inexpensive,
like $13.99.
Yeah, and then when this season closes out, same thing. You will be able to pick this up on Amazon. Please do that. It is support these guys and give them some money. I'm so pumped that it's on MGM Plus, only because like MGM Plus is the perfect example of like that's just one step too far for most people. Netflix and Hulu, of course, we all get, but MGM Plus, it has such a not great catalog, and unfortunately, they really just picked up this incredible prestige sci-fi drama. So, if you can stomach it, it is $5.99 per month to be able to watch this, and if you can do that for 2 months, I think it is worth your time. If you can
drop $9.99 on Shudder for the Boulay Brothers, you can do the $5.99 for this.
I tend to agree.
I kind of wish we could just start normalizing that in general, and especially streamers themselves. I wish they could better recognize people picking something up and putting it back down in that regard, because we don't have Apple, but there's at least 2 shows that we love, that I love, and there's one that we all love that's on Apple in terms of Monarch, which was picked up for a second season.
Fraggle, and
I love that was mine. It's Fraggle Rock I love. And if it keeps getting picked up, I don't want to own Apple TV. There's not enough on it. But it is definitely a show that I think is worth and would advocate this idea of, pick it up. Go get it temporarily, because there's definitely projects that, even if it isn't necessarily worth always having that streamer, I feel like there's a psychology of, we think that there's something against just putting the money up temporarily, But I think if we are just a little bit more cognizant of our own billing and make sure that things don't re-up accidentally, I think it's worth the variety of entertainment that you're giving yourself.
Yeah, and like I said, that's what I've been. It has taken me 38 years of my life, but I've finally gotten to a point where I am cognizant of the billing. I really wish companies would let you do like a I'm in it for Beacon 23 option. So they'll give you a
Yes.
2, because this is 8 episodes. So from the first episode, you need 8 weeks of paying for MGM Plus. And then if they would just stop billing you then, or at the very least just give you a really immediate end subscription option, game changer for so many people. And I honestly think companies would make more money than they would out of, fingers crossed you forget, like a gym membership.
Yes.
But this is the world we live in, and
or fingers crossed you change your mind and you ultimately find, yeah, there's actually more on this streamer, and now that I'm seeing your ads or seeing things that you list, there are other shows I want to watch, so I'll buy in for more. Like, I think giving people the option of only buying the things they want actually will lead to people buying more things than they expect.
Preach.
I agree, and that's part of why we cover what we cover, making it a little bit easier for you guys to follow things on Paramount Plus, as well as MGM Plus, and like Kevo mentioned, like we cover Monarch over on Apple TV, and way, way more. Of course, tomorrow we're coming back to talk about something that you'll only be able to check out over on Paramount Plus. It might wind up on WoW. After a while, of course, we're going to be back to talk about everybody's favorite Ass 9, which is RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars Season 9. This time it's for charity, so anything anybody does that's really gross is okay because it's for charity. And we can't wait to talk about that tomorrow. We're going to come back, have Mr. Peak Jonah on with us. It's going to be a great time. But you know what? I want to sign off, tell everybody where you can find them. And you know what? If it's not too much and too on the spot, if everybody could just highlight one other piece of really exquisite sci-fi that they love, that you can check out right now. I'll go first. I know we're taking care of it next week, but Knuckles was not just a great piece of sci-fi. It reminded me about why the Sonic movies define family unit. It really explored the idea of an existing family adopting a single member, which creates the idea that found family isn't always 10 people coming together to create a family, but instead normalizes the idea of adoption. And in the world we live in, that any parent would want to give home to a child is beautiful. And so I cannot say highly enough, Stockard Channing's performance in Knuckles is a fucking Abby Bartlett level. Abby Bartlett does Krav Maga on television.
What a surprise.
What a surprise.
A delightful surprise that we had no idea was coming in terms of her being in this project at all, how much she was in.
Amazing.
This project and this universe is a delight. So absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
This is my big sci-fi. Kevo, what's your big sci-fi and where can everybody find you on the interwebs?
Well, you can find me on the interwebs at Kev O'Reilly. That's KEVOREALLY. And the thing that I am super stoked for is the upcoming season of Doctor Who.
So excited!
The more and more we are hearing about this new era of Doctor Who, the more excited I am. It's going to be messy as hell. And I am aware of that. But it's taking so many risks. The third episode back for this season is Stephen Moffat returning to the franchise for the first time since he left as showrunner. He's not just back; he wasted no time. I'm so excited. I loved the Chibnall era for what it was, but it was a low period. It was a quiet period. It was a resting period, and I feel like this is us really trying to kick the doors down. And I'm super stoked to talk about it here with both of y'all. Teak, what are you excited about, and where can the folks who don't find you?
I am gonna put another call out for Silo. It's gone a little bit under the radar. I think again, the Kevo mentioned earlier, Apple TV is a tough one. I will say this, people, like, this is not for Kevo and Nico, because I talk to them about subscription stuff all the time, but you do not need any sort of Apple device to subscribe to Apple TV. That's an unfortunate branding thing. Is like it's really tied with the hardware, but it has nothing to do with that. And they do some fantastic prestige television. So I really do. That is one of the better ones. I wish it weren't called Apple TV. Because it just kind of makes you think like, oh, I have to have a MacBook to watch it. But it's just like they actually just have too much money and they're just absolutely blowing it on television.
Well, Mac and television didn't test well.
Yeah, there you go. But this is a fantastic series based on a fantastic set of books. And for fun, just go Google how Hugh Howey completely changed the publishing world by making these books. But just incredible actors, Rebecca Ferguson, Tim Robbins, Common. I mean, it's just a really good series. Like I said, I rewatched it because of Beacon 23 and finally finished it because I actually never did. And I just reread the books recently. It's just fantastic. I love that JoJo Siwa is just in this.
I know, made it into this coverage. JoJo Siwa and the Muppets.
It could not be more relevant to like the current climate of the world we are in which for those archaeologists that are watching this 2,000 years from now, JoJo Siwa's Karma's a Bitch has just come out. And while it has tanked her career, it has really shot up the career of the woman who recorded it before her. It's just a wild world we're living in. And if you want to see how that's just going to dystopianly go tits up, you should watch Silo. And then you should talk to me about it on Twitter at TK Elemental. I'm also on Instagram too.
Sometimes
Nico.
I think about the ways that I pollute the internet with my art. Like if you Google Silo, you will probably find this image come up on Google image search. Yep. You're welcome, internet.
I'm so blessed to be a part of that nightmare of sci-fi goodness. If you guys want to find me, you can check me out at Nico Action. It's NICOACTION. You can also check out my music at Nico Action Music. That's NICOACTION MUSIC. Right? You can turn that over on SoundCloud, YouTube Music, and more. Don't forget to check out the videos of my live performances. You can check out my amazing comic book work with this fella, as well as a ton more over at KidRiotComics.com. And I could not be more excited than to say that we're having some of the best weeks we've ever had on this channel. And it's because people like you are choosing to like, comment, and subscribe. I feel chosen. I feel like Meredith Grey. I do. You picked me. You chose me. You love me.
Listen, you're not going to know for sure until you actually start watching that.
I've watched the whole first season, and so I know.
Wait, have you really?
In my life.
When he was in your life.
But not, okay, but yeah, it's
I'm ready.
It's available to you to watch now. I'm saying.
It is. We're excited. So we're very excited.
I can't promise we're going to be caught up for the next season because, oh my God, so many episodes, but we're going to work.
We're going to work. And until you guys cover girl, work it girl, do your thing and make love to the camera, I want you guys to do 3 things for me. Number 1, you guys got to stay safe. It's such a crazy world out there. People are hitting people with hammers. And all I want you to do is to put yourself in a giant magic cocoon that you can see through, that protects you. Like the chamber that Steve Rogers gets all buffed out in. I just want you to be able to see the future ahead of you, but always be safe. That's number 1. Number 2,
that's number 1.
I want you to help my husband continue loving me after that cringe. I want you to be brave, just like Kevo and TK continuing to be men that love me despite this sign off. It's a crazy world out there, but if number 3, you guys can choose to evolve daily, you're going to be incredible. Who you were yesterday, amazing. Who you are today, we love it. But who you are tomorrow, that's the dream. And we cannot wait to see who you're going to be. So until all that happens, go home, watch Knuckles, watch Dead Boy Detectives, watch the Meet the Queens so you can watch our next 3 broadcasts plus some comic shit and Wednesdays in the middle. And we can't wait to see. Oh, watch X-Men 97. We'll see you.